and welcome back to Literally Literary. If this is your first time joining us, be sure to check out our previous episodes. This episode, we are beginning our discussion on Funeral for Flaca by Emily Prado. This episode, we will be discussing an overview of the collection of essays, looking at the major themes and connections we've made. This episode, we'd also like to welcome Reina Munoz to our team.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
How's everyone doing?
Good, yeah.
Well, it's been a minute, guys, and it's good to be back on the chair. One of 4 chairs today. I am your one of your co-hosts, Jorge Gomez, and I am joined, as always, by one of my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And
Richie. And I'm really digging the balance of the way this table feels right now, because right across from me, we're going, welcome.
Reina Munoz. Thank
perfectly
you all.
balanced.
Insert Thanos meme.
But without all the evil energy.
Right.
Nothing but positive energy.
Of course.
Yes.
Now, we'd like to say that Reina has been here as a guest, like host from all the way back to like episode 2, right?
Episode 2 or 3, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, this has been a long time, long due. Like, I feel like you've always had the open invitation. So now you know for sure, right?
Yes. Now I'm invading this space and I like it. No, I thank you guys for allowing me to take up this space and contribute. I love the podcast. I love everything you all have been doing. It's going to be a wild ride, I'm sure, but yeah, say thanks, and I hope that the listeners will stay on, knowing there's a new addition to the podcast, but I'll try my best to fill the Jorge's shoes.
Well, I mean, like Richie said, since that 2nd or 3rd episode, you have always been at the forefront of kind of what the mission of this podcast is. And you've been in the background also, helping us with your own students and promoting it with, your community and, teaching Citizen Legal and having your students, send different things for the podcast of like things we could cover. So we feel like it's kind of been a long time coming, if anything. I was telling my colleagues here about the decision to kind of step down. It's just I want to give more voice to women first, and in the podcast itself, and second, just kind of taking a break and focusing on like my work and other stuff. I'm really happy to have you, and I think you were the top choice, always. And
There was never even a choice. It was always you.
right. Yeah. So,
Wait, weren't you saying something about a sorting hat earlier?
Yeah, for fun. No, but I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I think it's worth mentioning that during our little hiatus, like we received a lot of new followers and hopefully a lot of new listeners. So if you are listening for the first time, it is great having you. Shout out to Me Too for including us in that post. And you're absolutely right. To have Reina is so important too, like to help with these like Latina led podcasts, and just like to we're only going to get stronger, And I say this because, I say it with no sense of finality, but like, you're always welcome to come in and hang out with us and chat about the books and the literature and themes. I know that things are busier with work, but anytime, I would say that. So don't expect to hear more from him at some point one day. All right. But for now, you're stuck with us. Reina.
No pressure, right? No pressure for the Latinas.
I would say for listeners, like, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more? Like, who you are, like what you do, your background?
Yeah, so I teach full time at EPCC Rio Grande campus here in El Paso. Um, I feel like that's my whole identity right now because it's all I do ever. But I'm really involved in a lot of things, community led projects with art and literacy. So I'm part of Border Senses. Um, and just a lot of different things. I don't know. I don't want to bore listeners who are just come here to listen about books with like all the other stuff I'm into. But I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy reading and talking about books. That's the nerdy side of all of us, I guess. So this should be super fun. But I'm definitely going to be bringing in a lot of pop culture references,
Perfect.
music references, my own childhood experiences, probably. So just, letting everyone know that that's coming. Yeah, I don't, yeah, all I could say about that right now.
Well, that's perfect because I mean, what we're embarking on this new book, and really we know of it because of you. So I don't know if you wanted to share that story of how you came across that book and how we've even come to it now, talking about it on this episode.
Yeah, so it was really, I was in LA, I was in California for a few weeks this summer, and I had seen on Instagram a store called Espacio, I want to say 1893. I think that's what it's called, but it's in Boyle Heights. It's a little Latinx owned shop. And I had always wanted to go, and I followed them for a while, and they always have authors there. They have little events. So we went, my sister and I went one day, and we were kind of just looking around the shop, and they have a ton of books. And the book that stood out to me that just caught my eye was Funeral for Flaca, mainly because of the cover. It just has, this beautiful pink coffin with flowers, and it's on fire with a black background. And it just caught my eye, and I had never heard of it. I had never heard of Emily Prado. But I picked it up, and then I looked at the back cover, and I saw, known names. Gali Fajardo Anstin, talked about it, had a little blurb, and it resonated just looking at the cover, and it just spoke to me, which hardly ever happens, I need to say. And that's why it was really surprising. And so I picked this book up, not knowing anything about it or the author. And then the next day, Kali posted about it on Instagram, and then I just started seeing it everywhere. And so I thought, it was meant to, to be seen by me, and I just need to read it already. And then the next week, I think, Gris Munoz, whose book you all covered, Coalicue Girl, local poet, author, she talked about it as well, and she talked about bringing Emily to El Paso. So it all just kind of happened within 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, I need to read this book, and I know I already know I'm going to love it. And so that's kind of how it happened, and I brought it up, and we've all just been talking about it, and we had that a nice little visit. We were able to bring, they were able to bring Emily Casa Ortiz and Gris to talk about their book. So just amazing stuff happening with these authors. And this is her first memoir, book of essays, but she has, other stuff she's working on now. So really excited to read a little bit more about Emily and to talk about her.
Wonderful. Yeah. You said it perfectly. We're done. It's the fastest episode ever. Oh man. I'm just kidding. So Vanessa, what do you think about that talk? Because all of us were able to go, which I think was really nice.
Yeah.
Shout out to Casa Ortiz, by the way.
Yes.
And of course,
Beautiful
Gris Munoz.
space.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I love the space there. I finally met Gris because we
Oh,
did.
you had a minute?
I had never met her, so we did everything virtually. She like signed my book and everything, but I'd never met her. So it was finally nice to meet her. She's so nice. I really like the discussion because they went back and forth talking about how their books are basically cousins. So I think that's going to be really interesting to like talk about this one now and like kind of compare it to that one as well. I don't know. This one's really music heavy, and I think we've talked a lot about music with some of the other books that we've talked about. I think Poet X mostly had a lot.
Citizen Illegal.
Citizen Illegal. Yeah. So I'm excited to talk about the music in it.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to that, it's also unique in that we haven't really looked into like a collection of essays like this.
Yeah.
Biographical, like reflection. That's also a playlist, which is super cool, right? I mean, we were super amazed when we got to talk about that with Mexican Gothic, right? Like the custom playlist that was made. And Emily, of course, has gone and made her own playlist, which I imagine we'll talk about, if not today, in future episodes.
Gali made a playlist too. If you
That's right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, so I guess that's kind of one of the unique,
It's a
cool
new thing.
things you can do, like working with new media and books attaching. But I do want to mention, just for listeners, we did. I had an opportunity to film and record a little bit of that reading and Q&A that we were talking about. So maybe in the last episode we'll share some snippets, as a kind of a podcast exclusive, with the permission of the authors. I asked both of them on that day if I could film, and they both said yes. So, and hopefully, I mean, we haven't really like asked or confirmed, but maybe we can even invite Emily to join us on a call. So anyway, it's things to look forward to.
Yes.
It's already a lot.
Yeah, so me and Vanessa really enjoyed the fact that this book, instead of chapter titles, she has tracks. So the whole, collection of essays is a mixtape of sorts. And it's a nod to her, side hustle. She's also a DJ on the side, DJ Mommy Miami. Love the name. And so, she wanted that to be, at kind of in the background, but also in the forefront, if that makes sense. The essay that started it all was the Tupac essay. Now I can't track title. Vanessa, help me.
Keep your head up.
Keep your head up.
Yeah.
That's what started it all. And so that's a little later in the book.
On page 49.
Okay. So I know she talked about that in the visit here. How that's what started everything. And then she realized, it would be cool if I titled all of my essays with, song titles and kind of base them off of these tracks. So I really like that. I like the structure. I like that instead of, having chapter titles, she just has tracks. And so she has an intro and outro, titles or, tracks to every essay. So that's something that immediately stood out to me and that I really, really enjoyed. Most of the tracks I was familiar with already. Some of them I wasn't. So it was kind of nice to delve into that too.
Same.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah.
I like how she talks about flow. I don't know if you guys ever did this, but the whole idea of the mixtape has a narrative structure to it. I mean, when I made mixtapes, that's how I envisioned making them. Like they would tell a story. There'd be some sort of narrative thread in the way I chose songs. And she talks about that, creating a flow. And so it makes so much sense here using it like this for the chapter titles for each essay. And of course, the way they're presented, chronological, kind of going through her life, different memories, different experiences. It fits so well. So I don't know if you have those experiences too? Like ever trying to like theme a mixtape, you
All
know,
the
with
time.
the narrative
All the time.
thread?
Burning CDs. I don't know.
my
I know
God.
some of us are old enough. Not Vanessa.
I have so many. I still
you?
have them, like CDs. Like I
Oh.
write on like
Yes.
title of
Okay.
different things.
Sharpie
Yeah,
it
no,
up.
draw
And then
stars.
like there's not a lot of space, so you have to like really write small, or like I would do it in like a spiral. Yeah, I have a lot of
And
those.
even further back, cassettes, you know?
Or recording off of the radio and then
You had to
waiting
wait
for them
the song to go on. You're like, wait, hold on, record it now.
to press record now.
Memories.
It was so stressful. But yeah.
I think one of the reasons we enjoyed it is because I think music is such a universal thing. We grow up with it and identify with a lot. And I mean, just kind of, going just again with themes of having like multicultural background or living in different backgrounds of countries, and we're exposed to a lot, and I think we have talked about this on this show in the past is because of that, we have very eclectic tastes in music, which I'm super proud of.
I think we'll see it like, in sharing if we share some of the songs that helped us in our formative years the way that Emily did, I think we're going to see just how eclectic even just the four of us who have grown up in the same area, it's going to be really different. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, interesting is the word.
Love it.
I think for those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, we might connect to it in a different way, than the newer generation, the Generation Z as well, right? Because, what we're talking about mixtapes, like they have playlists now. And, a lot of the references, to the artists and like the culture. So I think that I like that, like it doesn't seem dated though, of course it's a memoir, but it has the like it's contemporary at the same time. So I like that it's a good mix of that, pun intended.
That's interesting because I thought it did seem dated in a lot of, I think just because of the music that she was choosing. And because I identified a lot with this. So this is going to come up a lot. I'm going to be like, oh yeah, when I was 12, blah, 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 too. I'm going to be doing that a lot, just spoiler alert. But I did feel that a lot of it because of, she's talking about playlists, she's talking about like, what she would wear and just the fashion. And so you're taken back into the early 90s, early 2000s, like punk era and like Avril Lavigne stuff.
Yeah.
And if you didn't grow up during that time, or if you were at a different age during that time, it's going to read differently, I think,
Yeah.
So it did seem a little dated, not in a bad way. I mean, she's talking about growing up, during that time, so it makes sense. But I did feel like we were transported, to this era, which is great. I love that about this book, because I felt, and when I saw the book and when I read it and I posted about it, I said something super cheesy like, this book found me.
I was going to mention it. Yeah. Spoke to me.
It spoke to me. Because it really did. Like, I felt like this could have been a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it was my childhood and was a lot of the things that I was going through identity-wise, and trying to find, like, what am I going to be? Am I going to be chola? Am I going to be preppy? Am I going to be punk? Am I going to be, what am I? And music, for me, as it was for Emily, was a huge part of her identity. Like, what am I listening to, and how is that affecting, like, how I dress and who I am, right? So I really like that, because I totally identified with that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take that.
So, not to say, like, that it wasn't dated, because it was, but
Yeah.
that's how I took it.
Yeah, by the way, if you guys do want to check out the playlist, I mean, first of all, what are you doing listening to this podcast without reading the book? But if you want to check it out, she does have it online at tinyurl.com/flaca-playlist. Pretty simple. I love tinyurl. It just makes things so much more simpler to find. So you can check that out. And did you guys try and I mean, every time we've talked about this as a new phenomenon, but like, do you ever try and like read along with the playlist while you're reading that essay, or read along with that specific track?
I didn't, but I think
I kind of did. But obviously it took me to longer to read the essay than the actual song was. So it would just I would let the playlist keep going, but I would kind of.
I would even recommend like when you finish the essay, just to like play the song to like meditate. And like as kind of since I think the song is more thematic to what you just read, to let it help it kind of sink in and let it like see how that influenced why she chose to title it that way.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good idea.
And speaking of thematic, Richie, did you?
Sorry, I was making weird faces. Jeez, this is how my face looks. Because
you were like looking around, and I was like, "What is he doing?"
Here's that? Is that thunder? Is that
It was
a roll?
my stomach.
It's not. No, it's not. Okay.
Leave that in
some of
there.
those nuggies.
You guys are making me edit a lot today.
See, that's what happens when you bring in a fourth.
Don't regret it.
It's the balance.
Do you guys want to talk? Well, I guess say we could talk more about the visit, but maybe.
I was just gonna say that before Vanessa started laughing like crazy, but no, I'm kidding.
Crazy, huh?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. The themes, I don't know if before maybe. I mean, if you guys, before digging into the weeds, maybe for listeners who are just first hearing about this book or maybe haven't picked it up yet, what are some things that jumped out to you guys, just from the collection as a whole, or?
Wow.
I mean, I think identity is obviously like a big part. I think abandonment is also another one. Acceptance also.
Trauma.
Yeah.
And also, I guess it's important to, as a sort of trigger warning, she does talk a lot about eating disorders, so should definitely mention that during this first episode.
Yeah.
And the sexual assault too.
Sexual assault, yeah. So there's quite a bit of that. Grief, loss. But even then, and I think in reading and researching a little bit about Emily before the visit, even with all of those, that's like grief, loss, abandonment, trauma, eating disorders, sexual assault. Even with all of that, it's a very hopeful book. There's a lot of humor, and her voice is pretty lively in most of the essays, I feel like. And some of them, they're, obviously, she's dealing with more serious issues, so she's not trying to be funny. But overall, I think the book isn't a downer. It's even with all of the things that she's going through and that she's remembering and talking her way through, I still think there's a very hopeful tone to it. I don't know how you all feel about that. If you agree or if you think that.
Well, I mean, she kind of refers to this whole process as her metamorphosis. So it's definitely, a lot of writing for us is finding out some sort of truth for ourselves, and sometimes it's dealing with trauma we may not have been able to deal with up until that point. And so it's a process, and I think and part of that is just understanding it, finding a sort of acceptance from it, and it is kind of like a way to move on, like a things one of the part of things. I just did a workshop. Well, I didn't do the workshop, but I helped run the tech side for it was a work online writing workshop with Josefina Lopez, who authored Real Women Have Curves, and the play, and then of course the film. And she spoke a lot about that thing, about writing about trauma, how sometimes sometimes it can take up to a decade for us to be ready to write about these things. And so this is to me, Emily, kind of dealing with that, because the title of the book, draws out that big theme of her identity with like that nickname, and how that affected her growing up, the funeral.
Yeah.
I just think back to the event where I don't know who it was someone in the back. Maybe I don't know who you. I think you guys were sitting there. If there was going to be a what they call it, like if there's a funeral, is there going to be a uprising?
Sada.
Yeah. Oh, was it Sada who asked?
Yeah.
Okay.
She asked if there would be a resurrection.
A resurrection. Oh yeah. Kind of like a phoenix type thing.
Yeah.
I think is what I imagine she was like framing that. So. But you're right though. Her voice shines through. I absolutely love it. The way she writes.
Yeah.
The way she just describes
Yeah,
things.
she's not being
Explanation.
self-loathing or like poor me. She's just remembering and misremembering a lot of stuff. So I definitely want to get into that, like how she writes about memory and how she's really honest about how memory can be, one of those things that you're 5 years old, like you're remembering something how it was. Now she's in her late 20s, I think, 29 or something like that now. So of course things are going to be a little gray, or you're going to remember them how you want to remember them, or whatever. Memory is very, I don't know what the term.
It's complicated to talk about. It is. I think the more we learn and study, like the brain and how we actually how it works, we know it's very imperfect. I do know that a lot of the memories we remember the most are the ones that are tied to specific emotions. So it's always great to talk about, like, memories are imperfect, but even then, the way she uses these to navigate through her book, her metamorphosis.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And that is her whole, I guess she wanted to, in the dedication, and in the outro, not to give too much away, but it is in the outro, and it is in her dedication when we talked to her, and met her. The dedication says, "May this collection offer you nectar." It's something like that in the outro too. So that's in reference to that metamorphosis as well. And so it's all evolving. It's ever, changing. It's natural, a natural progression to what she wanted to say in this book, and for it to be in the book, and that's it. I'm telling my story. This is what happened to me. This is not who I am now. And it's one of those things that, like, when you write about this stuff, like trauma especially, how much of it is like cathartic and how much of it is just like, I need to get it out. I need to talk about this. Because it couldn't have been easy, right?
Yeah.
To talk about all of this stuff that she went through. So it's definitely, something we'll get into with each chapter, especially the childhood trauma, because I feel like a lot of it, if not most of her trauma happened as a child. And then different types of trauma later on. But yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy stuff. in the beginning, but hopefully for listeners, it doesn't deter you from wanting to read this book because it's amazing. It's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Future Tense Books, by the way, publisher. Something I always like to think about during these kind of first episodes when we dive into a book is a little bit of the publication history and really the author's acknowledgments. It's always important to note how much of a community comes behind and supports writers, and so of course she gives her acknowledgments. And the fact we learned this as well from her visit with Greece, that there's an earlier version of this, right? That was kind of more of like a chat book that she put together. A zine. It was a zine, yeah. So, and the reason why I keep bringing this up is for our listeners. Like sometimes we stop ourselves from creating because we want that perfect final product, like right there, then and done. But as you see, even with this book, that we're holding in our hands, and hopefully you are too, that there was a journey too, a creative journey, and it took a community, a lot of, as she says, helping people help edit and revise and buying those first zines to getting in contact with the publisher, Future Tense, and eventually making this happen. And of course the tour part and having, so I'm just to encourage all you writers, it's almost sometimes like a mountain, it looks overwhelming, but there's only one way to climb a mountain, that's step by step. And it's encouraging personally on my end to see these parts of the process every time we look at a book. So.
That was really cool to learn about that, and her talking about how it was a zine. And if you've ever, looked at zines, like they're so beautiful in and of themselves, but they're so, fleeting and like fragile. And it's just like, oh, I'll never see that one again. And if she hadn't like really believed in this book and sharing this and really pushing it to become what it is, I think that it would have just been lost, like so many other zines that are out there. Which is really unfortunate, but I'm glad that she was like, I'm going to make this happen. Everyone needs to read Funeral for Flaca. And I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's also one of our missions, I think, by talking about them and get to, hopefully introduce people to more of it. And as Emily says, one of our goals is for this to be accessible to so many people. We always talk about audience, and so in this case, I think it's her audience is her, like her young self that she's writing about, and everyone like her.
And we haven't done Future Tense books before, but I was looking that they're based out of Oregon, which is also where she's living, even though she's from California, right? The Bay Area. And it's Francisco Morales who did this amazing artwork that you mentioned, Reina, in your intro. And I also like the back, the altar. It is, of course, one of the themes of the book in general. It's just like the Mexican traditions and her identity, as you mentioned, specifically being identifying as Chicana. And I'm sure for you, Reina, that was one of the things that kind of drew you to it. I also like the feel of it, like the paper itself, right? The cover and back cover. It feels a little bit like Ben Science's book, Everything Begins and Ends. I like that feeling a little bit better than the ones that are more like clean and glossy.
Stock.
So for those of you who are thinking about the ebook, don't do it. Get the physical copy because you won't regret it.
We're all ecstatically rubbing.
We're all rubbing your books right now in a really weird and creepy way.
It's ASMR.
It's not creepy at all. Oh yeah.
Though, but it's part of the reading process. I think the tactile, like feeling the pages and
smelling it.
Yeah.
Like, listen, guys.
Yeah, just rubbing it. You didn't even think you were going to get some ASMR content in this podcast, but now you got it.
On today's episode, we rub a book for 20 minutes.
Speaking of like aesthetics, though, the photographs,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So those are the two things that stood out to me. Three things, like the front and back cover, the tracks, instead of chapter titles, and then the photographs. She has so many photographs in this book. It's not, a 500-page novel. It's adequately sized. The photographs are just so beautiful and telling and intimate. So I really loved that she included those. I mean, I think it's kind of like expected with personal essays or memoir genre, but it's not always there. So I enjoyed that. I really like looking at those pictures.
Yeah.
It truly does give it a multimodal feel to it, right? Because you get the photos, and then with the tracks, right, you get the audio too. So
yeah, she was covering all the bases with this book.
Yeah, the photos are a great touch, and it just also reminds me of so many writing workshops too, where they ask you to look at a family photo and kind of use that as a starting point too. So I wonder if any of these essays started maybe because she talks about the writing community that she was part of early on.
Point.
The Publishing Resource Center. It's a prose and bookmarking certificate program. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rich Yanez, I know, is big on that activity.
He's the one who's like telling me that he loved just the photos. He's like, man, I want my next novel to look like this.
Yeah.
When he saw this, he's the one who told me that.
That's a great thing, is when you make another author envious of like, man,
and word on the street, he's working on his own too, right? Like his memoir.
Yeah. So hopefully when he's done, we can get him on here. Yeah, gonna try to rush him. Hurry up and finish.
You're listening right now. Rich, Tocayo, hey, come on, man.
Yeah, he's working. He's doing a lot of stuff right now, but but he's been working on that for a few years already. So yeah.
Did you guys want to talk about connections that you guys made to other books, either from the podcast or it's just from your own reading?
I mean, there's so many from like just the podcast that we've talked about that like I thought of when I was reading it. Obviously, I mentioned Poet X. I think one that we haven't talked about on the podcast, but I'm reading it for one of my classes, The Death and Life of Aida Hernandez. And it's very similar. She's living on the border of Agua Prieta and Douglas, Arizona. And it's kind of her journey, but she experiences a lot of the same kind of things. And I was telling my sister the other day, I was like, I can't read these at the same time because I keep mixing up the characters and like the people and the events. And I'm like, wait, did this happen in this one or in the other one? So it's very similar, I think.
Yeah. Cool. Who's the author for that one?
I can't remember.
Like, is it a biography or like a fictional biography or?
It's kind of similar. It's creative nonfiction.
Oh, okay.
But it's based on a real girl.
Yeah.
It's really good. I recommend it.
Yeah, so you had a quite literal, like, God, I got to keep them straight together.
Yeah. I want to say also Guillotine a little bit.
Yeah.
I haven't read that. Those are poems, right?
Yeah.
I've been wanting to read that.
I think just like the idea of like having brown skin is really prominent in that one, and it's also really prominent in this one.
Yeah, I think it's definitely conscious of like, racism and colorism and those kinds of issues, that make it, I think, a little bit more contemporary, because, she mentions like Black Lives Matter, social media. It's our second memoir. And so, the first one, Black Klansman by Ron Stallworth, did deal with, racism at its core. This one, I think one of the big differences is that use of humor that you're talking about, Aina.
Yeah, Black Klansman was, very police reporty.
There's procedural elements to it.
Yeah. Which, is a callback to his profession, so it makes sense.
There's a lot of relatability to this,
a little
to
more,
cultural, day-to-day life,
And I like that she writes I'm sure we'll talk about this, but it's chronological. So she starts with kindergarten, and so in the kindergarten chapter, she talks as a kindergartner. So she's remembering, these memories and remembering how she felt being 5 years old and what a 5-year-old would say, which I think is super challenging for anyone. But I really like that she does that. And her voice starts maturing through the chapters. So that's kind of a cool element too, which you don't see in other memoir. I think it's a lot of just like remembering from present day, not remembering as you're living it.
What other connections were you guys thinking of?
Obviously, Sabrina and Karina. Just the and also Guatlicue Girl. The idea of healing and the idea of healing through writing, I think, especially. I followed her on Spotify, and since I'm always listening, like at school, when I'm listening, it shows you like who you're following and like what they're listening to.
Oh yeah.
And so she always comes out, and I'm like, that's what she's listening to.
Gasp. Wait, do I leave this on the show?
I don't know. Do you think
should.
she'll block me?
That's cool though.
Well, I know that not for this episode, but I know you had like a nice kind of reflective for like a creative
assignment
for us, and maybe we can open that up to listeners. Yeah, for like maybe like the last episode, we can share, and we can even invite audience members to maybe message us, and we can share some of theirs if they want.
I thought it would be cool. Just, and it doesn't have to be, I don't know how many tracks Emily has in this book. 20?
We did find a discrepancy though, right?
Yes.
That
Vanessa, talk about that.
So mad.
Do you want to talk? Do you want to talk about it?
We can talk about it. There's one song that's not on the playlist. By
Probably
Shakira.
more than that.
One that I can like think of off the top of my head. It's by Shakira.
She didn't make the cut.
Favorite album by her. It was kind of sad that it wasn't on the playlist. I forgot what page it's on.
Was it the Sega?
46, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it said.
Yeah.
Yeah, 46.
Ciega, sordo, mudo. I don't know. I listened to that song all the time when I was growing up. It's like a really weird song to be listening to when I'm like 5 and 6, but I loved that album. I had the CD, and I would play it in my like Hello Kitty CD player.
Yes,
That's an image.
Bring more of those.
Well, she's 10 here when she's listening to it, so you were listening to you? Okay.
I think it was probably my mom's CD, but I was like, I really like this, so I'm gonna keep it.
So she didn't include it in the mixtape Spotify playlist. No. So Why?
It'll be on mine though.
Yeah, you're a completionist. Like, all right, I gotta make my own
I'm gonna
playlist
include
today.
it. Yeah, it is kind of weird that she did mention a couple of other songs throughout the essays and chose not to include them in the playlist. So
Is the playlist just only chapters, or I mean, it's also references to songs
Yeah,
that she
she
mentioned?
included-
I thought it
references.
was just chapters, but interesting.
Maybe we can have that as a question if we do get her on there. It's like, yo, what's up with?
Why did you hurt my feelings like this? I'm just kidding.
Why would you
didn't
do this?
include Shakira?
But I liked what you were mentioning though, like as kind of a creative exercise. I don't know if you wanted to like mention it so we can think about and maybe bring about the next
Yeah.
couple episodes.
Yeah, so we might have like 2 more episodes on this book, and I'm thinking like to end it, maybe we could start thinking about 5 songs that, you know, made a difference in our formative years or during our coming of age or whatever you would like. I feel like because Funeral for Flaca, it was during many years, it was like a pretty big span. It's harder to do. So if you want to pick like your childhood, 5 songs in your childhood, or 5 songs coming of age, or 5 songs that, you know, are your favorite of all time, like it's up to you all. But I think that would be kind of a cool exercise to try to limit it, because that's the hardest part, right? We have so many songs that we, you know, identify with or love, or we're just like, that was 2003. That was my song in that year, you know, or whatever. So, I mean, it's going to be a challenge to pick just 5 songs, but try to make it a 5-song playlist mixtape.
It's a good challenge.
And try to encapsulate whatever it is that you want to, whether it be your childhood or, you know, high school years or whatever. Yeah, I know. Vanessa's giving me the evil eye.
That's great.
Y'all
Can't
can't
many-
see that stuff on podcasts.
And I don't know if you're going to be joining us for the future sessions, but you're more than welcome to share with us, and we can share with the listeners.
For
At
sure.
least.
I'll share some tracks. I'll say that it probably won't be the same as Emily's, but
How many are going to be corn?
Number 1, for sure, is going to
Yep.
be corn.
Yes, I remember when I got my glasses when I was going blind. We can share them, man, if you want to pass them along. And,
yeah. And I think, you know, you so you were telling us pre-show, Reina, that you're going to teach this book in the spring for the Chicanx class, and that would be a really cool student activity. I've heard similar activities, I think, and having them do that, you know, based on this book.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, if I do that, it'll probably be linked to an essay and probably give it like a full CD length. So like 10 to 12 songs.
Yeah.
But 5 songs is tough.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited to teach this book and see what my students think about it. Because so far, I mean, Vanessa's still a student, but other than that, I only know of colleagues or, you know, other academics who are reading the book. So we have our own ideas, right? So it's always good to have like the student input on the book. So I'm excited for that.
I'm glad you're going to be teaching
Hopefully I
that
get
class.
students.
Yeah, I mean,
I just need students to sign up for
If you're
it.
listening right now, sign up, enroll for the class. You know, like look out for it.
It's going to be online. So well, we have an online section. Yeah, it should be fun.
So that's English 2351 at El Paso Community College.
Today's episode is brought to you by El Paso Community College. Have you ever tried to find the best place to start and finish? Check out El Paso Community College.
We should get some EBCC shirts just for that alone. You know?
Enrollment, that's all we needed. It's up. Look, it's skyrocketing.
It's up 1,000%. I don't know why.
Oh, we were mentioned on the podcast. Perfect. Love you. I know we're gonna definitely get more in depth essays. We usually split it up: first half of the book, second half of the book. So, looking forward to those discussions and hearing what you guys think.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
I'm excited for you guys.
Otis, like, he can't wait to just run out the room right now.
No.
or one foot out the door.
I know. So excited. Bye, y'all.
Are we still recording?
We're still sitting down. Yeah, we are.
Stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue this discussion. If you haven't read it, we hope we inspire you to pick up a copy. Follow us on Instagram at literallyliterary.ep and on Twitter at literallylitep.